There is a leaf that grows where sunlight fears to go. It holds more protein than a steak. It thrives in the cold forests of the north, where most crops collapse. And it spreads across the ground like a green carpet, feeding everything from insects to empires. For centuries, it was the invisible backbone of survival. Then we buried it. We did not abandon it because it failed us. We abandoned it because it refused to be contained. A plant that grows in shadows, multiplies without planting, and feeds without fields cannot be industrialized. And what cannot be industrialized cannot be monetized. This is the story of the shade crop that fed nations, survived extinction, and still waits beneath the canopy. Before we go deeper, if knowledge like this matters to you, the simplest way to keep these stories alive is this. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and send this to someone who hungers for what has been forgotten. The record begins in the forests of Central Europe in the year 1390. A Benedictine monk named Hildegard walks through beech woods collecting plants for the monastery garden. The air is cold. Winter approaches. But beneath the canopy, green persists. She bends low and pulls handfuls of wild greens growing thick beneath the trees, their leaves still soft despite the frost. She calls it Grundiesel, earth donkey, because it is humble, tireless, and everywhere. A name that speaks to peasant wisdom, to the understanding that the most reliable things are often the least celebrated. The leaves are broad, soft, and ribbed. They taste sweet when young, bitter when old. She boils them with barley and feeds the poor who arrive at the monastery gates each morning. This is Aegopodium podagraria, known across languages as goutweed, bishop's weed, ground elder, a perennial in the carrot family native to Eurasia. Long before Hildegard, Celtic tribes knew it. They gathered it in spring when other foods ran scarce. Roman legions carried it across conquered lands, planting it near their fortifications as portable nutrition. Wherever Rome marched, ground elder followed. Along Hadrian's Wall, through Gaul, into Germania. The Romans understood what modern agriculture forgot. The best crops are the ones you cannot kill, the ones that ask nothing and give everything. It grew where nothing else would. Dense forest shade, compacted soil, freezing winters that split oak trees. The plant sends rhizomes underground like white fingers spreading in every direction. Cut the root into 10 pieces and 10 new plants rise. Pull the leaves and more appear within days. It cannot be stopped without total excavation, and that persistence made it sacred. In medieval Europe, famine struck every decade. Not occasionally. Every 10 years, like clockwork, disaster arrived. Crop failures from weather, from disease, from war. Grain crops failed when rains came late or early. Wheat rotted in flooded fields. Barley withered under drought. Oats never sprouted when spring frost came hard. Rye succumbed to ergot, poisoning entire villages. But ground elder waited in the woods, always green, always ready, asking nothing. Peasants knew where it grew. Every family had secret patches, known locations passed down through generations. Mothers sent children to gather it by the armful. Fresh leaves went into soups. Dried leaves stored through winter, hanging in bundles from rafters, insurance against starvation. Boiled greens mixed with oats became gruel that kept families alive when wheat rotted in the fields. Monks planted it deliberately around monasteries, creating edible perimeters, rings of resilience. They called it a gift from God, a crop that asked nothing and gave everything. By the 1400s, ground elder surrounded every abbey from Scotland to Poland, from Ireland to the edges of the Carpathian Mountains. Monks ate it during Lent when meat was forbidden. It became the green that filled bowls when grain stores ran empty, when the rye ran out, when starvation knocked on monastery doors. But something else spread with it. Medicine. The Latin name podagraria comes from podagra, gout. For 1,000 years, healers used ground elder to treat inflamed joints. They mashed fresh leaves into poultices and wrapped swollen knees and ankles. They boiled roots into teas for arthritis, brewing them with honey when available, without when not. Did it work? Folk records say yes. Nobles suffering from gout, the disease of rich diets, the price of too much meat and wine, paid herbalists for ground elder tinctures. St. Hildegard herself wrote that it purged corruption from the blood, that it cooled the fire in diseased limbs. We dismissed that as superstition, medieval fantasy, old wives' tales. Then scientists tested it. In 1996, researchers in Germany analyzed Egopodium podagraria for bioactive compounds. They found falcarinol, polyacetylines, flavonoids, and phenolic acids. These compounds reduce inflammation, inhibit enzymes that trigger gout attacks, and act as diuretics, flushing uric acid from joints. What medieval monks observed through centuries of trial and error, chemistry confirmed in laboratories. Ground elder was not magic. It was biochemistry hiding in plain sight, waiting for instruments sensitive enough to see it. But the greater power was nutrition. Fresh ground elder leaves contain 4.2 grams of protein per 100 grams. Beef contains 26 grams. But beef requires slaughter, land, water, grain. A cow needs acres. Ground elder requires nothing. It grows wild. It asks for no irrigation, no fertilizer, no soil amendments, no human intervention whatsoever. Adjusted for ease of harvest, ecological cost, and availability, ground elder outcompetes nearly every cultivated green. Spinach offers 2.9 grams of protein per 100 grams. Kale offers 4.3 grams. Ground elder matches kale and surpasses spinach while growing in total shade where neither spinach nor kale survives. The vitamin load is staggering. Vitamin C at 200 milligrams per 100 grams, more than oranges. Vitamin A, carotenoids for eye health and immune defense. Calcium, potassium, iron, magnesium. Minerals that keep bones strong, blood oxygenated, muscles functioning. The leaves are 85% water, making them hydrating in times when clean water was scarce, when wells ran dry, when rivers carried disease. This was not a weed. It was a superfood growing without permission. By the 1600s, European colonists carried ground elder across the Atlantic. They packed rhizomes in barrels of soil, protecting them like gold during the crossing. They planted it in North America around settlements, thinking it would serve as it had in Europe. Free food, reliable medicine, shade-tolerant survival. It thrived. The plant spread through New England forests, around homesteads, along rivers, into the Appalachian foothills. For a brief window, settlers used it. Colonial records mention it in spring tonics, boiled greens to fight scurvy after long winters locked in cabins. Women traded rhizomes like currency. Plant this near your house, they said, and you will never starve. But something shifted. By the 1700s, European agriculture industrialized. Crop rotation, selective breeding, enclosed fields. Jethro Tull invented the seed drill. New plows turned soil faster. Farming moved from forests to open plains. Annual crops, wheat, barley, potatoes, took over. These crops required cleared land, tilled soil, purchased seed. They could be measured, taxed, stored, and sold. They fit into ledgers. They generated revenue for landowners, taxes for governments, profits for merchants. Ground elder could not. It grew in woods where plows could not reach. It spread beyond property lines, ignoring fences and boundaries. It could not be contained in fields or harvested by machines. Worse, it had no market value. You cannot sell what everyone can gather for free. Farmers began calling it a nuisance. It invaded gardens. Once established, it choked out other plants. Removal required digging 2 feet deep, sifting every root fragment. Miss one piece and it returned. By the 1800s, Ground elder was labeled a weed across Europe and North America. Gardening manuals warned against it. Agricultural extension offices published eradication guides. The plant that had fed millions became the enemy of order. But war does not care about order. World War I began in 1914. By 1916, food blockades starved Central Europe. Germany ran out of grain. The British Navy cut off imports. The government issued ration cards, 200 grams of bread per day, barely enough to survive. Maybe a potato if you were lucky. People turned to wild foods, scraping memories for what grandmothers had known. Ground elder reappeared. It grew in bombed-out parks, along trench lines, in abandoned gardens where roses once bloomed. Soldiers called it arme Leute essen, poor people's food, food for those who had no choice. They boiled it in helmets over fires, mixing it with whatever scraps they could find. Mothers in Berlin sent children into the tear garden to gather it by the sack. The children knew which leaves to pick, which stems to avoid. It tasted bitter, tough, nothing like the vegetables of peacetime, nothing like the gardens they remembered from 1913. But it stopped starvation. Chemists analyzed it during the war, hoping to stretch rations, looking for any advantage. They confirmed high protein, vitamins, minerals. The government printed pamphlets with recipes: ground elder soup, ground elder bread, ground elder pancakes, distributed them at ration offices. The crop that had been erased fed a collapsing empire. Then silence. After armistice, Germany rebuilt. Ground elder disappeared from tables again. No one wanted to remember the hunger, the desperate morning searching parks for greens, the taste of survival. The plant returned to the margins, to the woods, to the category of weeds, until World War II. In 1939, war returned. By 1942, Nazi Germany occupied most of Europe. Food vanished. Rations in occupied France dropped to 1,200 calories per day. In Greece, in Poland, in the Netherlands, people starved by the thousands. Ground elder came back. In the forests surrounding Leningrad during the siege, 872 days of blockade, residents ate anything: wallpaper paste, leather belts, sawdust bread. But those near the woods ate ground elder. Soviet survival manuals listed it as emergency food. The plant grew despite bombs, despite winter, despite everything. In the Netherlands during the hunger winter of 1944, 20,000 died. Families stripped trees of bark, ate tulip bulbs, dug frozen ground for roots. Ground elder, still green under snow, saved some. After liberation, the silence returned. Survivors did not speak of it. Trauma buried the memory. Ground elder became invisible again. But in the 1970s, something unexpected happened. The Back to the Land movement began in North America and Europe. Young people fled cities, seeking self-sufficiency, rejecting industrial food systems. They bought land in Vermont, Oregon, British Columbia. They read old herbals, studied wild edibles, foraged. Ground elder reappeared in countercultural cookbooks, in mimeographed newsletters passed between communes, in spiral-bound guides sold at food co-ops. Ewell Gibbons, the forager who made wild foods mainstream, wrote about it in Stalking the Wild Asparagus. He called it one of the best potherbs in North America, tender, abundant, and nutritious. He described eating it raw in salads, blanched like spinach, made into fritters. Foraging guides in the 1980s included it. Harvest young leaves in spring, boil or sauté, mix with cultivated greens to dilute bitterness. They printed illustrations showing the three-part leaves, the hollow stems, the white flower clusters. Permaculture designers loved it. A perennial ground cover, edible, medicinal, shade-tolerant, and nearly indestructible. Perfect for food forests. Plant it once, harvest forever. But gardeners hated it. It escaped garden beds, invaded lawns, smothered flowers. Removal required chemical herbicides or years of digging. The tension between forager and gardener defined ground elder's modern reputation. Miracle or menace, depending on who you ask. Today, scientists study it again, not as food, but as medicine. In 2003, researchers in Poland tested ground elder extracts on rats with induced arthritis. Inflammation dropped, swelling reduced. The ancient remedy worked. In 2010, studies confirmed antioxidant activity, potential anti-cancer properties, antimicrobial effects. Compounds in the leaves kill bacteria resistant to antibiotics. Pharmaceutical companies noticed. But you cannot patent a wild plant. You can synthesize its compounds, change the molecule slightly, and patent that. But the plant itself remains free, so it stays outside the system, known to foragers, ignored by agriculture, invisible to profit. Why did we erase it? The answer is control. Ground elder cannot be domesticated. It refuses rows, rejects monoculture, spreads without asking. It will not conform to human schedules or commercial timelines. Modern agriculture depends on annuals, crops planted every spring from purchased seed, grown in straight lines, harvested by machine, sold through distributors. Every step generates transaction fees, licensing costs, equipment rentals. Every step creates dependency. Ground elder defies every step. It is perennial, appearing each year without replanting. It grows in shade where tractors cannot go. It spreads underground where herbicides struggle to reach. Its leaves are soft, bruising easily, unsuitable for shipping across continents in refrigerated trucks. There is no way to turn it into a commodity, no way to insert middlemen, no way to create scarcity, no way to control supply. And food that cannot be commodified cannot generate profit. So it was labeled a weed, written out of cookbooks, forgotten by everyone except those who remembered hunger. But forgetting does not erase. The plant still grows. Right now, ground elder covers millions of acres across the northern hemisphere. It thrives in parks, forests, abandoned lots, the edges of suburbs. Most people walk past it daily without recognition. The leaves emerge in early spring, bright green, soft, ribbed like tiny umbrellas. By summer, white flowers appear in umbrella-shaped clusters. By fall, the leaves yellow and retreat, but the roots stay alive, waiting underground. Come spring, they return, every year, forever. Let's talk numbers. 1 square meter of ground elder produces roughly 300 grams of edible leaves per harvest. You can harvest 3 times per season without killing the plant: spring, early summer, late summer. That is 900 grams per square meter. An acre is 4,047 square meters. Do the math: 3.6 million grams. That is 3,600 kilograms, nearly 8,000 pounds of greens per acre per year. Spinach, grown conventionally, yields about 10,000 pounds per acre but requires tilling, irrigation, fertilizer, and pesticides. Ground elder requires nothing. No water, no chemicals, no labor beyond harvesting. The yield is lower, but the input is zero. In terms of return on investment, nothing competes. And it grows where conventional crops cannot. Forests cover 30% of Earth's land. Most of that is too shaded for agriculture. Ground elder thrives there. Imagine food forests across the northern U.S., Canada, Europe, Russia, layers of trees, shrubs, and ground elder carpeting the soil, millions of acres producing food without destroying ecosystems, no plowing, no monocultures, no runoff poisoning rivers. Forests stay intact, wildlife thrives, humans harvest. This is not fantasy. Permaculture practitioners already do it. But it is small scale, invisible to industrial agriculture, dismissed by institutions. Why? Because it cannot scale under capitalism. You cannot sell what people can gather free. You cannot patent what grows wild. Corporations need dependency. Farmers buying seed, buying chemicals, buying equipment. Ground elder ends dependency. Plant it once or do not plant it at all. It is already there, and harvest forever. That is sovereignty, and sovereignty is dangerous to systems built on control. The pattern repeats. Amaranth, protein-rich, drought-tolerant, was banned by Spanish conquistadors because it symbolized indigenous resistance. They burned amaranth fields, outlawed its cultivation, tried to erase it from memory. Kernza, perennial wheat, is ignored by Big Ag because it does not require annual seed purchases. Moringa, nutritionally superior to most vegetables, remains niche because it grows freely in the tropics, resisting commodification. Crops that enable independence are systematically marginalized, not because they fail, but because they succeed outside the market. Ground elder is the European example. It survived because it is unkillable. But it was buried in language, called a weed, a pest, an invader. Yet it waits. Climate change is unraveling industrial agriculture. Droughts kill annual crops across the Midwest, the Mediterranean, the Ukrainian breadbasket. Floods wash away topsoil in Pakistan, in Germany, in Iowa. Heat waves collapse pollination, leaving fields of corn that produce nothing. The food system feeding 8 billion people is fragile, completely dependent on stability, on predictable seasons, on systems that no longer function as they did. That stability is ending. Every year brings new records: hottest summer, driest spring, wettest autumn. Ground elder was born in chaos. It survived the medieval warm period, the Little Ice Age, 2 world wars, and industrial herbicides. It has outlasted empires, outlasted religions, outlasted every human institution that tried to control it. It grows in shade, in poor soil, in cold that kills lettuce. When the system breaks, and it will break, ground elder will still be there. It has always been there. In Germany today, chefs rediscover it. High-end restaurants in Berlin serve ground elder pesto, ground elder soup, ground elder salads plated with microgreens and edible flowers. They call it Giersch, reclaiming it from the weed category, rebranding it as artisanal, wild, local. Farmers markets sell it for €10 per bunch, marketed as a wild superfood, foraged from organic forests. The same plant gardeners pay landscapers to remove, digging up entire yards in frustration. Chefs pay premium prices to serve. The irony is thick enough to cut. In Poland, herbalists sell dried ground elder for joint pain, packaging it in brown paper bags with handwritten labels. In the UK, foraging courses teach identification, leading groups through parks, pointing at the leaves beneath their feet. In North America, permaculture guilds swap rhizomes at plant exchanges, planting it intentionally in food forests, calling it a dynamic accumulator, a mineral miner, a living mulch. The knowledge is returning, not from above, not from universities or agriculture departments, but from below, from people who see the system failing and choose alternatives. Here is what they do not teach. Ground elder is a nitrogen fixer associate. It does not fix nitrogen itself, but it grows in symbiosis with soil bacteria that do. Its roots exude sugars feeding microbes. Those microbes convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms plants use. The result: ground elder enriches soil while growing. It heals damaged land. After logging, after farming, after industrial abuse, ground elder moves in and rebuilds. It is not an invader. It is a healer. We just called it an invader because it does not wait for permission. The tribes of Northern Europe knew this. Before Romans, before Christians, Celtic and Germanic peoples honored plants that persisted. Ground elder was one. It grew in sacred groves. It appeared after fire, after flood, after death. Resilience incarnate. When Christianity spread, monks absorbed that knowledge. They planted ground elder in cloister gardens, continuing pre-Christian practice under new names. The plant outlasted religions, empires, wars. It does not care what we call it. It just grows. So why should you care deeply? Because the future is deeply uncertain. Food security is collapsing worldwide, not in distant places, but here. Supply chains are fragile, stretched thin across oceans and continents. Supermarkets depend on trucks. Trucks depend on fuel. Fuel depends on geopolitics, on Middle Eastern stability, on trade agreements that can dissolve overnight. One shock and shelves empty. We saw it in 2020 during the pandemic. Panic buying, shortages, fear rippling through populations. Now imagine prolonged disruption. Crop failures from climate chaos, war disrupting grain exports, economic collapse, energy crises. What feeds you when the system stops? Ground elder grows in your backyard, in the park, in the woods behind your neighborhood. It is there right now. You walk past it, you mow over it. But it does not die. It waits. Learning to identify it is simple, but precision matters. Lives depend on correct identification. Leaves grow in groups of 3, each leaflet oval with serrated edges, slightly asymmetrical. The stem is triangular when you roll it between your fingers, hollow when you break it, ridged along its length. Crush a leaf and smell, faint carrot, slightly sweet, pleasant. In spring, young leaves are tender, mild, almost cucumber-like. In summer, older leaves turn bitter, better cooked than raw. The flowers are white, umbrella-shaped, appearing June through August, tiny 5-petaled blooms in delicate clusters. Do not confuse it with poisonous lookalikes, especially poison hemlock. Hemlock has purple spots on stems, distinctive blotches. Ground elder stems are green, unmarked. Hemlock smells foul, musty, like mouse urine. Ground elder smells pleasant, aromatic. Hemlock leaves are more finely divided, fern-like. Ground elder leaves are broader, simpler. If uncertain, consult a local foraging guide, take a class, learn from experienced foragers. Misidentification kills. People die every year from eating hemlock thinking it was something edible, but once you know ground elder, once you see it correctly identified several times, you see it everywhere. Pattern recognition becomes automatic. Harvest young leaves. Rinse well under cold water, checking for insects or debris. Boil for 5 minutes to reduce bitterness, or sauté with garlic and oil like you would spinach. Mix with spinach, chard, or kale to balance flavors. Use in soups, stir-fries, omelets, quiches. Add to pasta dishes. Blend into pestos with nuts and olive oil. Stuff into pierogies. Layer into lasagna. The taste is mild, slightly tangy, earthy. Not gourmet, but nourishing. Our ancestors did not eat for pleasure. They ate to survive. Ground elder delivers. High protein, high vitamins, zero cost. That is wealth. That is security. That is power in a world where food has become a weapon of control. But the real wealth is sovereignty. Every plant you identify, every green you harvest, every meal you create outside the system is a step toward independence, toward freedom from supply chains and price fluctuations and corporate control. Ground elder teaches that abundance does not require markets. It requires knowledge, and knowledge, once learned, cannot be taken. They erased ground elder from official history. They wrote it out of agriculture textbooks, removed it from university curricula, deleted it from USDA databases. They labeled it a weed in every language, Giersch in German, Podagraria in Latin, ground elder in English, herbe au goûteux in French. But they could not erase the plant. It survived in the margins, in the woods, in the cracks of sidewalks, in abandoned lots where no one looked, waiting for hands willing to reach down. Our ancestors lived within that system for 10,000 years before agriculture. We can too. We may have to. If this opens something, subscribe and hit the bell. Every share protects what they tried to bury. The next story is already growing.